All right. Welcome to Be the Market Expert. And want to kick it off with this. And so I don't know if you guys have seen this going around social media right now, or if you've checked your emails. I don't know if you guys have received these yet, but what has happened in the last couple of hours is that we have a partnership with Zillow. And so it reads Keller Williams, Remax Home Services, Side, and United. And it says they are countering Compass Redfin Rocket Push with Zillow's new listing preview platform. All right, so I was just on a call. I'm going to send you guys all an email here a little bit later today. And yet, this is what this is looking like. So, what we know is this: over the last couple of months, Compass has made some waves. Let's go with waves. Why not? In the industry, because what they're saying is, hey, we want more exclusivity. And by the way of them trying to do this is they've really gone through and say like, hey, well, we just don't want all of our listings all over the MLS. We want to, really just force people onto our website to come purchase our properties. Now, obviously this has been met with some pushback because, what does this really look like? Because what we do understand is that the less eyes on a property, the less likely you are going to have as many bids on these properties as possible. And so when we're looking at this, Compass has really pushed this way. And so Keller Williams has come out and we've partnered with Zillow. Now, why does this matter? Right? Like as we kind of go through and we look at these different things and the importance of this, the big piece is this. What we understand is that Zillow has a lot of eyes on the properties. All right. So Zillow has about 219 million views a month. 219 million views a month. Realtor.com has about 72.5 million. And then Redfin, 57.3. All right. So that's kind of what this landscape looks like as far as eyes on listings on websites. Now, what KW has gone through and done is we've gone through and with this partnership, it's around coming soon listings. All right. Coming soon listings specifically. Inside of these coming soon listings, what has happened is the brokerage decides if we're going to participate or not. That's the first thing, right? So the brokerage makes a decision, yes or no, we're going to participate. Then, as you guys are going through and you're having conversations with your sellers have the ability to make the decision. Do they think that this makes the most sense for my property? Because at the end of the day, guys, our sellers have to be the drivers of what is happening inside of their marketing of their property, right? We understand this in our exclusive rights to where we're going through, we're looking at all the things that we're doing. The seller's in the driver's seat. Yes, we're the consultant. We're going to let them know the pros and the cons, right? As a fiduciary. And so as we're going through and we're doing these different things, the seller's going to say, yes, do this, yes, do that, no, don't do this, right? These are the things that are going to happen. So let's say that we're going through, we've opted in as a brokerage, you are explaining the pros and the cons of doing coming soon status, and that you say, well, hey, we also know this website, called Zillow, you've probably heard of it. They get about 219 million views a month. Do you want coming soon status? And your client says, yeah, let's do this. Okay, so then you toggle on a button, the button gets toggled. It's going to be toggled through kw.com. You toggle on the button, and what happens? This is where it gets interesting because we are huge proponents of my listing, my lead inside of Keller Williams. My listing, my lead. And we understand that Zillow's platform, Zillow's way they've played for numerous years has been come to our website, click this button, and we're going to send the lead out to someone else. So what they're going to do is they're rolling out this two new buttons. All right, there's two new buttons. Because keep in mind, what this is doing is this is on the coming soon phase. So I want you to keep in mind that they are looking at the property in the coming soon status, which you have toggled on. It's living in coming soon. And so coming soon has two new buttons. One button says contact listing agent. Cool, right? Like Zillow's never done that. They've never been like contact the listing agent. The listing agent's info has been there somewhere, but they don't do anything with it. All right. The second button says, no, keep it in the hands of a premier agent. And now if you guys are like, whoa, 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 hold the phone. Why would it still go to a premier agent? Well, here's the deal. Through this premier agent, we understand they got to cultivate these leads, right? For anyone that has had a lead, you understand that sometimes these leads are not going to transact business right away. And sometimes they're not going to purchase even that home. And if you've ever bought online leads, you know that sometimes these consumers click on tons of different properties, more information, more information, more information, more information, right? They're going through, they're doing these different things. So if they click on the premier agent converts them within this window. And I believe the window, again, this is super fluid at this point. Let's call it 90 days. Don't quote me on that. Within 90 days that they convert this lead that has come in this window, coming soon window. Keep in mind, remember, it has to be in the coming soon window. So as soon as it falls off coming soon, it's just on Zillow's platform, which it already is. And so it goes through and it lands on this button. They click on it, they convert, you get a referral check still, which is pretty cool. All right, we'll break down the math. We'll go through all this. This is not a call for this, but this is industry news. Like this is, I'm not on social media right now, but I can only imagine what is going through on these social channels. If you are on anything, I'm sure this is all the talk that's happening. So two buttons. One goes back to the listing agent. Zillow doesn't typically do that. This is industry exclusive to a handful of us. And because, guys, we were in the driver's seat with us. Like we could have said we were the only brokerage that wants to be a part of this, but yet we feel the transparency in this space is big enough for all of us. So we said, let's bring in some other people. The second thing, again, is that button, right? So where they say, no, I want to go a different path. They go the different path, and you still have the opportunity to get paid, which is pretty cool. All right. So this is going to continue to develop. Like I said, I'm going to send out an email breaking this down. I was just on a call for, 40 minutes on this morning. It was an impromptu call where it was like super like, here's this link. Please register for this call. We want you on this call. They couldn't tell us anything because obviously the driver of this truly is Zillow. And you guys saw the industry news break if you guys are following anything. Housing Wire, Inman, everything's picking up on this. So we'll play with it, guys, but this is in a direct, aiming back on the other side of what's happening with Compass. And this is what Gary says. He says, we believe an open market serves consumers the best. He says, sellers should have the opportunity to reach the broadest pool of potential buyers if they choose to do so. Because what we understand that is broad exposure generally benefits the homeowner. And it says information, marketing plan, timing, showing rules, and offer management, those decisions belong to the homeowner. Our job as a professional is to fully disclose and explain the options and let the seller decide. And this is no different, right? That's not breaking news. That's not a hot take. That's nothing. Like you guys understand that all we're supposed to do is say, hey, I'm the fiduciary for you. I want to get you the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of hassle to you, the seller, as possible. And here's another tool in my tool belt to where we can do this if you so believe that this is a decision that you want to make for us to pursue down this road. And so this is cool, guys. So we're excited about this. We're going to see how this thing plays out. It should be a good thing all the way across the board. But again, like you are not forced to do this. Your consumer is not forced to do this. This is a decision that you make at the dining room table. All right, let's switch gears. I did pull this open. I thought it was interesting. It says, the income needed to purchase a typical U.S. home has increased by 79% in the last 6 years. And you said, well, Charles, you said this is interesting. This actually makes me more sick to my stomach. And yeah, I totally get that, right? Like as we look at this, it says, incomes haven't kept up with the cost to buy in the for sale market, but they're slowly catching up. Guys, we're seeing this, right? We're seeing these different things where income is moving. It's just that life is expensive. And we see that percentage wise, it's just more expensive percentagely as a percent of income to purchase and to live these days. I mean, like, let's just say what it is. So it says, here's the annual US household income needed to purchase a home in the United States. And so what we understand is this, while these dollars are across the board, there's some states that are unevenly yoked, right? So we go through and it looks like a 2020. Okay, cool. Let's look at this thing. We're talking global pandemic 2020. 52,000. 2021 didn't change much. Remember, because interest rates were super cheap. Firstly, no one's buying home in the global pandemic. Secondly, interest rates went down. So, I mean, like it didn't really matter. What we understand in 2022 is they started gradually going up and then they skyrocketed, right? Like we saw this hockey stick hit hard. So it says then 63, then 87, then 93, then 90, let's call it 98. Let's call it 99 between friends. Then it's kind of gone down to 93. All right. So we're looking at this. It says while the income needed to buy the medium price US home is 78% higher than it was in January, it's still down 5.9% versus last year. Well, why is it down versus last year? It's really just because we're seeing more of a flattening in the market just because there's more homes popping up on the market for sale. Supply and demand. All right. So we're looking through this. Where this methodology come from is going through Zillow. All right. So Zillow twice in 2 slides. So when you look at this household income needed to afford the financial purchase of a typically valued home. And so they're doing typically valued homes. So you know that you in the United States or in Colorado were not typically valued. But here we go, guys. We can see this like it's just inching up, like, and then it skyrockets, right? There's that inverted hockey stick again, where we just go through it. It's like we're up there. So we're going in. It says, hey, regional housing markets have been experiencing the outright home price correction since the end of the pandemic housing boom, and have seen faster affordability improvements. As I said, many of these places like Austin, Texas Metro also experienced greater home price overheating, right? Because what did we see? We saw these people go to some of these more affordable areas, the Panhandle, maybe coastal, where it's cheaper coastal places to live because of the digital nomads. But here you go. Let's go through here. There's Texas, I don't know why this thing's not letting me click on it. Maybe it's because I enlarged it. Okay, I have broken it, so I cannot click on this. But as we go through, guys, we can look at this one. So it says household income needed to afford the financial purchase of a typical home, valued in 2020. Here we are. Like if you look in here, remember you're this square for those that didn't do well in geography. And you can kind of tell your colors, right? Like we're in this area right now. We are absolutely in that, that $100,000 area in 2020, global pandemic. But let's fast forward. And now you're in 2026. And guys, we're living closer to this blue over here. All right. So we understand, right? Like as we're looking in this thing, we live in one of the highest price point states in the nation, but it could be worse. We could be in California. Worse for multiple reasons. But when we look at this, when we're just talking about household income needed, this is what it looks like. All right. So obviously we understand Panhandle, like when we're in this, we have more affordable places. We understand that in the northeastern part of the United States over the last couple months, by last couple months, I mean like year and a half, this has been the area where a lot of people have been moving. That's why it's getting more and more expensive out here, because this was after the global pandemic and the Panhandle. We saw a lot of people move to it, but then after that, and we saw people going more to the northeastern part of the United States. And obviously, guys, coastlines are always typically more expensive. All right. And we understand that we typically follow, especially in Colorado, we follow the coastlines. All right. So whatever happens on the coastlines typically comes on its way in. And we truly see that in Colorado. So if we're looking at this, here's your percentage change from January 2020. It says the housing affordability lever, not pictured, mortgage rates. Back in 2020, the average 30-year fixed rate mortgage rate was 3.5%. And we all understand this because this is where most of our buyers are wishing they still lived and they had the DeLorean to go back and through time to be able to do this. And it says in January 2026, it finished at the month at 6.1%. So pretty significant jump if we look at this. All right, so here we go. We got dark blue. Here you are. Income needed. This is, as far as percentage goes. U.S. home prices. Okay, here they go. They've kind of gone up and they've, kind of flatlined if you looked at this a little bit. U.S. average workers' earnings. We don't see this really go up and down very much. This is pretty a flat line, as well as inflation. And obviously, right, when we talk about the Fed dual mandate, like this is one of the things that they're constantly looking at is inflation data. And if we were to look at interest rates, this is why interest rates have remained as high as they have for as long as they have. is to curb inflation. Because what we do understand is this, with the cost of money, with the cost of money going down, right? When we think about, interest rates to go purchase a house, if they drop interest rates, what happens is not only real estate people go out, and we have 2021 all over again, but we also have people going out and spending more money on other widgets. And so that's what inflation starts going up, because if the demand is higher than the supply, what happens? The cost of goods goes up. And that's 100% what we saw in 2021. Keep in mind, right? Interest rates were super low. People were like, well, I can go afford a really cool house right now. And we had all this money, right? Because remember, digital nomads were happening. So we had all these people who are like, I don't want to live in this state anymore. And they were moving states. And we were one of those lucky states that got a lot of transplants. And so what did we see? We saw these home prices go up astronomically, right? We saw $100,000 over asking, waiving contingencies, right? Firstborn naming rights to children. We saw all of these different things happening. And so as we're going through and we're looking at this is why they do this for inflation and why we don't have these huge bumps, right? They say like, hey, 2 to 4%, right? We're going to live somewhere in there. Like that's kind of where their standards are. And when we look at this, again, this is, starting from 2020. So we're up 26% over 6 years, 30% over 6 years, 44% over 6 years. And oh my goodness, housing. So guys, as we're looking at this, all we just want to understand is that home prices have gone up. Workers' earnings have gone up, but not as quickly. And so this is showing us, right? While they have gone up 30%, and inflation has gone up 26%, that means like goods and services have gone up, plus housing costs have gone up. And so you actually need more money. We obviously experience this in Colorado because, again, we live in one of the most expensive states in the nation. Do you want to talk about this? Because this is news. All right. It says Trump executive orders target housing supply and mortgage credit. All right. So what it's doing, it says, hey, they give HUD, 60 days to outline the permitting best practices, while the CFPB is urged to expand qualified mortgage lending and revisit TRED. All right, guys. So check this out. So real estate school people recently, you probably understand this. Non-real estate school people, this is just one of those things that you just saw like a big change one day. Like you were doing transactions back in the day. And this was after you got your license in like a weekend. And one day you're just like, oh, we have more forms that we have to follow. So President Trump signed 2 executive orders targeting housing supply and mortgage access. It says these directives push HUD and FHFA to revise construction and permitting rules and call on the CFPB and bank regulators to expand qualified mortgages, revisiting TRED, tailor capital rules, and modernize appraisal using AVMs and AI. Guys, and here's the thing. Let's go back to this AI thing. This AI thing, when we're talking about appraisals, this isn't a flashy word, right? I think that we do use AI in a lot of stuff, and we're just like we're trying to be hip. And with that being said, I said hip. With that being said, AI, when we're going through and we're talking about appraisals, this is not going to be a fad. This is going to be the next reality. And AI, especially with appraisals, the big reason why they're going to be doing this is because the appraisal industry is slowly but surely kind of disappearing, in the sense to where to become an appraiser, you actually have to go through and you have to have an apprenticeship. And this apprenticeship piece, since it is, this scarcity mindset of there's only so many homes, and if I let someone apprentice under me and I sign off on all their work, then where am I going to have my next, house to go appraise? And so they've kind of done this to themselves. And so we're slowly but surely seeing less and less appraisers out there. So they have to go to something different, as well as line it all up, right? Like if it's all in an algorithm and the algorithm's the same across the board, we should have better outputs. So that's a good thing. Yes, there's still going to be some bumpy stuff, right? Because they're not going to be able to account for the view and some other things. So that's when it's going to be a little bit trickier. So what do we have? It says One of the order directives, various federal agencies, include the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, also known as HUD, and the Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA, to work together on reviewing and revisiting a number of regulations. All right, lowering the barriers to building. Cool, guys. And so, like, while we live in Colorado, we're seeing what we believe is a lot of building going on. There's other things that are happening, right? So they're going through and they're saying, like, you know what? We need to be able to build faster and get through this yellow tape. And guys, we can see this. Like, let's go look at where all the wildfires have happened across the states over the last couple of years, and let's go look and see how the rebuilding's going across the board. There is a lot of red and yellow tape to cut through, right? So they're going through and we're doing these different things. So it's saying, like, hey, we need to scrutinize various environmental protection laws that may be leading to reduction in new home construction, increased home ownership costs, including higher property tax and insurance burdens. Guys, and we've been talking about this, right? So we're going through, we're looking at this. The American dream of home ownership depends on a dynamic housing market in which varied inventory of new homes is built and renovated each year. Layers of unnecessary regulatory barriers, slow permitting processes, and onerous mandates at all levels of government have delayed construction, guys. And here's the thing. I'm not saying, like, let's get rid of laws and rules and regulations. And yet we got to look back at them and say, like, hey, is this helping or hurting? Yes, at some point that everyone was like, yes, this was a good idea to put this in place. And yet times change. And if we were to remove some things, they're going to go through and they're talking about lending requirements. All right. So the Big Short, you guys know I like to talk about this. And so because of the Big Short, that's why we had Reg Z and TILA, which is known as TRID. All right. So we have this. And again, for my old school real estate agents on the phone, this is when you popped up and you just knew one day you had new regulations and new forms to fill out. For real estate school students that have gone through real estate school in the last, 10 years, you actually had to learn about this because this was new practices and, like, this is content that gets tested on real estate now. And so we had the Big Short. What would happen is that you would have a lender, you would go in and you say, I want to go buy a house. And they're like, cool. And they hold up the mirror and you could fog it. And they said, awesome, sign here and go buy a home. You're like, you're the best. And they said, no, you're the best. And would you like another home? And they're like, well, I don't know if I could qualify for another home. They're like, I still got ink in this pen. Just sign here and you'll get a second home. Right. Then we saw the rise of the zombie foreclosures and we saw a bunch of crazy stuff because these guys were going through. And if you guys watched The Big Short, you were seeing some professions that might not necessarily have had the best income. And they were going out and getting 2, 3, 4, 5 houses. And here's the issue. The issue is not that they had 3, 4, 5 houses. The issue was that they weren't doing anything with them, right? This is back before Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, all these other platforms. And so the rise of the zombie foreclosures popped up. They were getting these homes. No one was living in them. They weren't renting them. They were just vacant homes for the sake of having a vacant home because the banker said they could do it. So they did it. And then the bankers were like, hold on, we have a problem. And they started driving by these properties and they started noticing no one's cutting the lawn. There's mail falling out of the mailbox. There's windows broken. What is happening? And then they were going up to the homes and they were peeking through the window and they were vacant. So they put some regulations in place that said, well, actually, because of all this that's happening, which has turned into foreclosures, we're going to need you guys to qualify people. And they were like, that's an interesting concept. We actually need to be able to qualify people to make sure that they can actually repay these loans. And here we are today. And so there's a lot of scrutiny around this at this point because now there's people that don't match all of those check boxes. And here's the thing. Let's think about a tradesperson. All right, maybe we have a tradesperson out there that doesn't have credit cards and they're going through and they're getting their paycheck and they're just crushing it. They're working 60 hours a week. They're doing jobs. They have their bank account. They're putting money into that bank account. They're north of 6 figures, not north of 6 figures, but they're over $100,000 a year and they're bringing in money, but they can't check the credit. They can't do all these other things because they don't have credit cards, right? They're just doing cash because they're making money. and they haven't put the other systems in place. Well, what they're doing now is they're saying, well, hey, there's plenty of people that can go afford a home. They have great paying jobs. They're doing these other things and they can't go get a house because we have too tight credit regulations. So the other people are like, you remember The Big Short, right? So we got two sides of the aisle here right now. And so we're not saying abolish all of it. At least I'm not. I mean, here we're going to see this. And they're also trying to get the big banks back into this because the big bankers are saying, like, there's not enough money for us to make with following these. So we're just getting rid of these loan products. And so they're trying to bring this back to where it's a win-win so more people can afford housing because they can already afford it. There's just regulations that are stopping them. All right. So they're saying, hey, there's been a lot of people that have been responding to this both positively and negatively because why not? But let's shift gears. Let's talk about what Logan Motoshami has to say, at least what he said on Friday. Remember, rear view facing. He says mortgage rates broke above 6.25% and ended last week's near 6.41% as volatility returned and spreads widened. All right, cool. That's the AI summary. But it says, hey, listen, lower mortgage rates and less volatility have been one of the key positive stories for 2026 for the housing market until last week. And it says rates were under 6.25% all year. We didn't see much volatility, which was a key variable of a healthy housing market. However, a lot changed last week. And keep in mind, remember, this is with the conflict in Iran. And let's just, I mean, I don't want to like use the W word loosely, but let's call it war. All right. So what has happened, Israel and the United States has bombed Iran, and not a political statement. That's just what it is. And how has Iran responded? Iran has responded by impacting oil trade, oil routes. All right. So they've gone through, and their response to this is let's cause chaos around oil. Okay. So now we have to keep in mind that where the oil is coming from right now is about 20% of the world's supply. One fifth. One fifth of the world's supply is coming from this impacted area right now. And so what has that done? Well, that has, caused some uncertainty of, what oil is going to be costing and what happens with the cost of oil. Well, oil is transportation. And so now how does your food get into the grocery store? They come in through semi trucks, and semi trucks need oil, and oil costs more, and King Soopers isn't the march of dimes, so they raise prices and inflation. Here we are, guys. So when we're going through all these things are happening, and now where we're going to go through is so some bond traders they're a little iffy. What else is happening? Midterm elections. They don't know who is going to be the new faces here soon, whether Republican or Democrat. And so with that means there's new policy, depending on what platforms they run on and depending on which ways they lean and who their friends are, which I think is what really matters. And so when they go through and they do these different things, there's uncertainty in the air. So what happens is we have some volatility. That volatility, goes to, the mortgage rates as we know them. We know there's not a direct correlation, but yet there's a correlation, and we're talking real estate. So let's just point it. So as we're going through, we're seeing these different things. It says for now, though, our data shows demand is still positive year over year. But as in previous years, whenever we get mortgage rate spikes towards 7% or higher, the demand curve fades. All right. We're not talking 10-year yields. We're not talking about treasury. We're not talking about mortgage spreads. But let's talk weekly pending sales data. Okay, remember this was last year, or last week. Here you guys are. You're this dark line right here. I'm going to call it that black. It looks black from here. So here you guys are. We can see that we have more pending sales for U.S. single family homes. All right, this is good, right? Versus 2024 and 2025, because in recent years, those have been pretty sucky. So we're looking at this and we're seeing more people are still going out and have properties under contract. That's a good sign. Purchase mortgage application data. Guys, so here we are. We see this big spike. All right. Keep in mind that as we're looking at this, the only thing that we necessarily care about is, are we trending year over year higher? All right. Like I don't care if it goes up and down. What I don't want to see though is I don't want to see it go below this red graph. All right. Like that's the big thing that I'm looking out for. And yet, as we're looking at this thing, we can see that not only are we not below this red graph, but we are actually up. This is good. All right. So not only are we year over year better, but we're actually week over week, if not month over month better at this point, right? Like here's the February 4th. Here's March 11th, right? Again, as we're going through and we're looking at this, guys, this is good. As we're going through and we're looking at this data, these data points are pointing to more buyers are raising their hand and they're reaching out to a lender to figure out what they qualify for. Now, keep in mind, yes, some of this data is refinances. But then as you look at this, and we're talking, okay, well, they spiked a little bit. So are people really refinancing? Yeah, they very well could, because keep in mind, even with the spike, some people have 8% interest rates. And so it still makes sense for them to do this. But they're reaching out to the lenders. Now, if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and being the real estate economist of choice and reaching out to your database and figuring out like how you can assist them through all this craziness that we call real estate, you're not sweating right now. If you're not doing this, you're probably nervous and you're wondering like who in my ecosystem has reached out to a lender and has not brought me into the fold. And that should make you nervous, right? As we're going through, these are the things that we should be doing. We should be getting to emotional proximity to everyone in our database if you guys want to help them buy and sell. Now, here's the deal. If you do not care to help your people buy and sell real estate, then don't do these things. And this graph should not make you nervous or excited or anything. But yet, if you want to use your real estate license to help people with the largest financial decision that most Americans make in their lifetime, and you're looking at this graph and you're seeing, oh my goodness, there's a pretty big spike right here. Not only year over year, but people are trying to figure out what they qualify for. Is this someone that I know? Guys, you should be reaching out to everybody. Your weekly housing inventory, here we are. We're still year over year for the last 5 years, 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 22, right? As we're looking at this, we have more inventory. Guys, this is why we're seeing the housing prices go more flat than our typical, 4% year over year appreciation, because we have more inventory on the board, which means buyers have more opportunity, which means sellers have a decision to make. If I want my home to be purchased, I have one of two different paths I can go down. I can either lower my sales price so I can compete against the neighbor, or I can add value to my home. Like those are the only two levers that can really be pulled to make my house look better than the competition. So that's also why we're seeing more homes come on the market where they are more competitively priced, because we're looking at the enemies, right? We're bringing the homes online. And before we bring them online, we're looking at what is the competition? How long have homes been sitting on the market? What are the price points of those homes? What are the conditions of those homes? And hopefully we're moving the sellers past what happened to their neighbor's house on Zillow back in 2021, because those conditions are no longer real. So then you look at this, and here we go. We got 2024 and 2025. We got Christmas colors here. And we can see that there are more homes still coming online in 2026, which is a good thing. And then as we were talking about this, and we were just saying that, hey, what we understand is we got two different levers. We can either price it right. And if we don't, we have two different roads we can go down, drop the price or go through and improve the home. That's what we have the ability to do. Eric, I saw you took yourself off mute real quick. Then I think you just disappeared from the call. And he's gone. All right. So as we look at this, guys, what we understand is they have those two different levers after they come on the market. Well, here what we can see is this. 32, let's call it 33% amongst friends. 1/3 of all homes. 1/3 of all homes have taken a price cut last week. But that's not news. This is not news, because what we understand is, historically speaking, 1/3 of all homes take a price cut every year. So we're right in line. We have more inventory. we have more buyers, and we're still seeing 1/3 of all homes because that's going to be the path that most sellers take. Most sellers say, I want the most amount of money possible. And you're like, awesome, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. What are we listing at? Because we're the fiduciary and they have the ability to say what they want. We can guide them. They land on a price. So they land on a price, and then their motivations start to change a little bit more, and they really want the home sold, and they got two options: increase the value of the property so that you can get that dollar amount that you looked for, kitchen, bathroom, paint, carpet, right? Like hardwoods, whatever we got to do, or do a price decrease. Most people are taking a price decrease because that is the lesser of the pain points that they have. So what are we looking at this week? Because remember, this is Friday. So it says on Monday's podcast, they went through and they said they're going to preview the Fed meetings. But just last week's theme, as long as this Iran conflict is ongoing, that will be more important than the economic data. Yeah, absolutely, guys. What is happening out in Iran is going to cause a lot of uncertainty. I even saw something about the draft, which actually asked my buddy the other day, like if he still has his draft card. And so kind of looking at this, it says, as long as the Iran conflict is still going, there's going to be more important economic data because the data is still backward looking versus current reality. So as we're going through and we're doing these different things, whatever's happening out there could have a major impact on us. And yet that does not change what we should be doing, being in as many conversations as possible about real estate as that real estate economist of choice. This is the key surprise we might have with the Fed meeting on Wednesday, tomorrow, is that some new doves might sound hawkish, right? So they're just going through and they're saying like, hey, some people might throw some speculation about what is going to be happening in the market, which is going to cause the bond traders to get scared, and bond traders get scared and there's more uncertainty and prices start to fluctuate again. That's all this is saying. It says, buckle up. This week might be crazy. So we'll see, guys. We're only on Tuesday, but let's look at mortgage rates. So here you guys go. Like we can see this, right? Like we can see that what is happening, because this is what this is. This is 100% what is happening in Iran right now. Nothing else is going into this data. All right. This is oil prices causing things to get a little bit crazier, plus as well a conflict that is potentially going to turn into a war, and we just don't know how deep this is going to happen. So here you guys go. As you look at this, this is just 1 month's worth of data. This is February 14th. Yes, Valentine's Day until the 16th, right? Because it doesn't give me today's data for whatever reason, which is St. Patrick's Day. Look at that. And so as we're going through, what we can see is that it has gone up. And so as we're having the conversations, guys, this is what's super important. Like you cannot time the market, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. And yet, when we're also doing this, this is what tells you that these are the people that are motivated. The sellers that are on the market right now that have no clue what the interest rates are going to look like down the road, these are your motivated sellers. So we're seeing purchase mortgage application data go up. We're seeing listing data go up. Guys, there's people that, again, their butts are sore from sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to happen in the market. Now, we don't have a crystal ball. We do not know what the stock market's going to do. I mean, we can guess. We don't know what the housing market's going to do. All we know is that typically through these times, as we're experiencing them, there's fear and there's uncertainty. But anything that we look back historically speaking, what we do know is that these things rally back the other way once we're through the conflict. So while there is no real calm around this, if we can look just at historical data, when we're in it, once we get outside of it, it looks a lot better and the markets come back stronger. And these are the conversations that we should be having with our clients, our consumers, our buyers and their sellers to give them at least some ease, even though we cannot guarantee results.